The summer movie season has finally started with a really big hit over the weekend, and it's about damn time. I'm Adam. This is Does It Hold Up Box Office Edition, where we go over the past weekend's box office top 10 movies. We see a comparison between 2023 and 2024, and we do a flashback to an old movie to see maybe how profitable it was. As always, we get started with what were the top 10 movies at this past weekend's box office. So let's jump right into it. Summer movie season finally got the kick in the ass that it really needed with Inside Out 2, which takes the number one spot easily with the biggest opening of 2024, $154.2 million. Yes, you heard that right. Inside Out 2 made $154 million this past weekend. It made $39,000 per screen that it was being shown on. That is massive. 2024 has been such a down year for movies that a lot of people were very skeptical of what movie theaters could still look like. A lot of people were claiming that it was dead. I myself on this show have said, I don't know how much longer they can survive, but hopefully they'll continue. And then we get a massive opening like this. It's just a nice feeling. I just wish it maybe was for a different movie. I'm not the biggest fan of Inside Out. I think Joy is one of the worst protagonists in any movie over the last 15 years. She sucks. Just saying. And if you want to hear more about what I have to say about her, check out our podcast, Does It Hold Up, where we just ranked all 27 Pixar movies from worst to best, and you'll be surprised where the first Inside Out actually shows up on that list. Alright, let's go ahead and move on. In second place is Bad Boys Ride or Die in its second weekend with another $33.8 million, a 40% drop, so a really good hold for this movie. So far, it's brought in a very impressive $113 million. I didn't think this one was going to be as massive of a hit as it was, but so far, it's proving me wrong. And let's not forget, this past weekend was also Father's Day here domestically. So, well, at least in the United States. And so a lot of people were like, hey, what do you do with your dad for the weekend? How do you show him that you love him? Take him to a movie. And you can clearly see a few of the movies held pretty well or saw a little bit of an increase even. And I feel like that's just because a lot of families were like, hey, Dad, let's go sit in a movie theater because that's all dads really like, right? Watching a movie? All right, back to the list. In third place is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes in its sixth week with a very impressive 2% increase over last week. In its sixth week, it saw an increase. This is insane. It took in $5.5 million, and so far its grand total is $158.1 million domestically. I cannot explain to you how crazy it is to see a movie in its sixth week have an increase over its last week. Just this past weekend blew my mind here at the box office. In fourth place is the Garfield movie with another $4.7 million in its fourth week, a 52% drop, and it's taken in $78.3 million at the box office. In fifth place is If in its fifth week with another $3.6 million, a 54% drop, and it has crossed the $100 million mark with $101 million. Moving into 6 through 10, in sixth place is The Watchers in its second week with $3.5 million, a 50% drop. A decent hold, I guess. Usually for movies of this nature, you see a much bigger drop, 60, 65%, but it also didn't open very well. So holding 50% really isn't that impressive, but take the small victories, right? It's made $13.5 million so far. In seventh place is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga in its fourth week with another $2.6 million, a stronghold here of 37%, only down 37%. $63.3 million is what it's made. I feel like this movie really benefited from it being Father's Day because this movie was definitely falling off at a much faster pace until this past weekend. In eighth place is The Fall Guy in its seventh week with another $1.6 million, 37% drop as well. And The Fall Guy is probably not going to make $100 million, but you never know. Stranger things have happened It's at 88 million so far. And speaking of Stranger Things, in ninth place in its 5th weeks is The Strangers Chapter 1, fell 58% because the movie's not very good and not a lot of dads probably wanted to go see it. It took in just under $800,000 only, and right now it sits around 33 million. And in 10th place in its 2nd weekend during this re-release is Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring with 630,000, a 74% drop, but of course it's going to drop a whole bunch. This movie's been out forever. Everybody's seen it. 318.6 million since it came out way back in the early 2000s. Only one movie fell out of the top 10 this week to make room for Inside Out 2, and that was the Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers re-release. And, not surprising at all. All right, next up, let's go ahead and take a look at the 2023 versus 2024 weekend-to-weekend comparison chart that we've been following along for almost the entire year so far. And, oh my gosh, finally, some great news at the weekend box office. 2023, the 24th weekend of that year, only made $163.7 million total. The reason why? That was the weekend The Flash came out and completely bombed. I mean, sure, it made a little bit of money. It ended up going over $100 million, but it was a superhero movie, and it was a Flash movie people had been asking for forever. And it failed. Oh my gosh. I'm pretty sure I have like 7 or 8 weeks of videos here on the channel from last year at this time where we just continually talked about how poor this movie was performing. Insane. So obviously it opened up so low, which is crazy that the entire weekend still made $163 million. Insane. But the good news is 2024 crushed that. With that massive $154 million opening from Inside Out 2, 2024's 24th weekend made a grand total of $213.8 million. We didn't just barely beat 2023 like you can see on this chart a few weeks where we've been a little over them. It was completely smashed this year. Is it gonna stay that way? No, probably not, but you gotta celebrate the victories when they come. So, at least for this weekend, movies are back. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward here. We're going to talk about the top 10 movies of 2024 so far. And we do have some big changes here, except none at the top. Dune Part 2 is still the top grossing movie of 2024, followed by Godzilla Kong in 2nd place. 3rd place is Kung Fu Panda 4, and Kingdom of the Planet of Apes stays in 4th place with $158 million. It will not be there for long. In fact, it will drop down the list next week when Inside Out 2 takes that spot. But right now, Inside Out 2 is currently in 5th place, new to this chart, with that $154 million. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire drops 1 spot with $113 million into 6th. Bad Boys Ride or Die comes into the chart this week in just its 2nd week, takes 7th place with just over $113 million. If drops 1 spot to 8th with that $101 million. Bob Marley One Love somehow, some way, is still on this list. It came out February 14th. It has been 5 months of this movie. How is it still here? It won't be there for long. Over the next week or two, it's definitely falling off. It's impressive that it has held on this long. With that $96.8 million, it takes 9th place, but it did drop 3 spots this weekend. The Fall Guy falls 1 spot into 10th with $88 million. And because Inside Out 2 and Bad Boys Ride or Die are both new to the list this week, 2 movies dropped out, and that was Migration and finally, Wonka. Alright, that's it for the numbers this week. Trying to make it a little bit of a shorter show. Didn't have a lot of time to prep this weekend. Had a lot of events going on. So we're going to go ahead and move forward to the flashback portion of the show where we take a look at a movie from the past to see how well it did in theaters. Was it profitable, or did it lose the studio some big money? This week, we are going back to 2004 to talk about The Day After Tomorrow. We are currently where I reside, experiencing a little bit of a heat wave, and so I wanted to talk about a cold movie. Hopefully it should help. The Day After Tomorrow from 2004 did all right for itself. In its first week, it made over $100 million. I don't remember this movie being that big of a hit when it first came out. I know it has a really big audience. Emily, here on the channel, is a big fan of this movie, but I didn't realize how much money it made at the time it came out. Studios kept 60% of that, so they got $60 million. Domestic week 2, it made another $38 million. The studios kept 21 of that. Domestic week 3 plus, it finished out its run with another $48 million. Studios got to keep $24 million. Internationally, this movie was a massive success. $359.2 million. Insane. Studios kept 40% of that, so they got $143.7 million. It did get a release in China, but it only made about $10 million there. Studios kept about $2.2 million. The budget for the movie was $125 million, which probably was way too high back in 2004. Marketing costs for the movie we have listed at about $75 million. It had a really big marketing campaign, so that number's very plausible here. Total gross for the movie worldwide was $555.8 million. After the theaters took their cut, the studios netted $251.2 million. If we minus the $200 million spent on making the movie and marketing it, the costs, it means The Day After Tomorrow had an estimated theatrical profit of $51.2 million. Crazy. Again, I knew this movie was a hit in some way. I just, for the love of everything, did not remember it being this successful. That's why I love looking back at old stuff. Sometimes it just really surprises me. All right, let me know in the comments below what you thought about this week's show. Are you surprised Inside Out 2 did so well? What did you think of flashing back to The Day After Tomorrow? Is there a movie you'd like to see me flash back to? Until next week, just remember to be good to yourself, be kind to others, and as always, keep watching movies.